as a result of that?
No, I haven't, and I have been asked that a couple of times.
Yeah.
There's been nothing that has hit my radar. We have to be out there all the time, and I think our proposition, which is trying to be close to clients and provide that value, remains. And I think there's very few of us at our scale that can do that, across the globe. So as we're in the C-suite, in the treasury offices, in the CFO's office, I really haven't seen that.
Before we let you go, on the Fed, I was speaking to the UBS O'Connor CIO yesterday. He said markets are underestimating the risks to Fed independence in 2026. Do you agree?
I'm not sure if they're underestimating it. I think that if you look at the forward prices in the markets, the markets are pricing where they think rates will be next year. I think in that price signal is some sense of what they think the Fed's reaction function will be next year. I think for all of what we hear, the market data will be what it is. I think the 10-year rates where they are reflects a reasonable assumption as to what growth rates will be. So independence or not, I think there'll be a range of, there'll be a sort of a range of activity or, a range of outcomes that I think the Fed will look to work towards.
Bernie Mensah, thank you very much indeed. President of International Bank of America, of course, at the Bank of America Breakthrough Technology Summit and Dialogue here in Sussex. Guys, back to you.
Tom,
I think this is, hopefully it's a new model that we can utilize across some of these verticals that are really challenging for us, where we've been unable to fully reshore industries because we're facing competition that is thinking differently. Again, go ahead.
Sorry, we only have a minute left, and I just want to hear from you how this deal came together and the timeline here. Who did you speak to? Who first reached out? Trips to Washington, trips to Chicago or Nevada? Like, how did it all come together, and when did the discussions first start?
Yeah, well, we've been having a great active dialogue with the Pentagon going back to the first Trump administration and through the Biden administration, and now obviously the Trump administration. And obviously this is a nonpartisan issue, getting this supply chain back. Suffice to say that what we have been, as you know, in our mission, we've been focused on this single point of failure since the inception of the company. Post-Liberation Day, as we saw the Chinese utilize rare earth magnets in the trade disputes, that basically the cutoff of rare earth magnets had the threat of sending our economy into a deep tailspin. And so that really certainly accelerated some of this discussion.
Got to ask you, though, did you actually talk with President Trump about this? Like, who finally said, got to do it, signed it?
Well, I think you can look at the transaction documents, which were signed at the top levels of the Pentagon. So this was a conversation from the very top levels of the Pentagon.
Is that a yes on Is that a yes on the president?
Yeah. So this is again, I don't want to specifically name names of who we spoke to and how the conversations went about. But again, how about this? I will tell you that the president has directly mandated that we fix this supply chain. And so that is public. You can see that. And so the president mandated the secretary on down to fix this supply chain. And I think that this is really bold and decisive action to make that happen.
Well, investors certainly taking Investors certainly taking note. As we said, your stock up 50%. I'm going to say thank you, because there's three of us, and we really appreciated your time and getting having a conversation with you on this, because it does sound like it's pretty significant in terms of what happens with rare earths here in the United States. Jim, thank you. Stay in touch. You bet. Jim Litinsky, he's founder, chairman, and CEO of MP Materials. And of course, our own Joe Doe, Bloomberg News economic statecraft reporter. He's going to be back with us in the next hour. Joe, thank you so much.
Well, Jim Stenovac along with Carol Massar. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. With us is Bloomberg News equities reporter Alexandra Semenova. And I think it's always safe to start with food.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when there's so much deal-making activity today. A fun one is obviously this deal between a chocolate maker and a cereal maker. WK Kellogg is being acquired by Ferrero International. This is an Italian family that owns the company. That's, of course, the maker of Ferrero Rocher and Nutella, which, by the way, is my all-time favorite sweet treat. I feel like if I have a jar in my house, it's dangerous because I'll eat the whole thing.
Candies,
those little
You guys are talking about two different things. She's talking about Nutella, you're talking about the candies.
Both are delicious.
My husband, when he's like, hey, look what I bought for you. I love them.
Aww.
I know, it's really Sweet.
So they're actually going to be now.
This is why we like each other.
Exactly, we get along so well. They're going to be expanding their presence in North America with this deal. It's totaling $3.1 billion. It is basically buying the company for $23 a share. The move is intended to expand its presence in the U.S. Of course, it's going to bode well also for Kellogg, which has been having a little bit of a hard time. It's split into two companies, WK Kellogg and Kellanova, which of course was sold to Mars. And this is just a testament to broader difficulties in the consumer goods section. There's been a lot of consolidation among these companies with higher inflation and higher commodity costs. And tariffs, of course, have created another headwind for companies already operating on a very slim margin.
KLG up 30% as we speak. Just got about a minute to do two more. Delta Airlines, the whole airline sector soaring.
Yeah, soaring because, of course, it affirmed It alleviated investor concerns about how the consumer is doing. It reinstated its profit outlook for the year and said that travelers are coming back. You could see in the stock right now up 12%. The optimism here, its CEO said that basically consumers are kind of desensitized to all of the trade back and forth.
Love that, love that. I feel like these are the names that everybody's talking about today, including MP Materials, up 50%.
Yeah, incredible move on that company. I know you guys just had the CEO for a fantastic conversation. This is, of course, a rare earth minerals company headquartered in Las Vegas. It is making a deal with the U.S. Department of Defense, $400 million in equity and $1 billion in loan commitments from JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. And what's important here is that China has been a dominant producer in rare earth minerals. It's used that status to leverage in its standoff with the U.S. on trade. But President Trump has done a lot to kind of boost the sector, and you're seeing that here with some of those companies doing well, and this one in particular.
Highly recommend you check out our interview with Jim Litinsky, the CEO and co-founder of MP Materials. Thank you so much, Alexandra Semenova with Stocks on the Move. We do this every hour. Catch it, Stock Movers. You can find it wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify. We, of course, call it Stock Movers. That's going to do it for us. Bloomberg Business Week Daily. I'm Carol Master, Tim Stenevec. The close next on TV.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Cammie McCormick. The president's executive order ending birthright citizenship is on hold again. Wendy Gillette reports on a ruling by a New Hampshire judge today.
The federal judge certified a class action lawsuit that includes all children affected by the executive order, ruling it violates the Constitution. Legal analyst Lori Levinson.
We have a federal judge saying that it would impose irreparable harm because American citizenship is the greatest privilege that exists in the world.
President Trump's order would abolish citizenship for children born in the U.S. to parents in the country illegally or temporarily. The judge allowed a week-long period for appeals. Wendy Gillette, CBS News.
A federal judge in Maryland is considering a request by Kilmar Abrego Garcia to send him to Maryland to await his trial on federal human smuggling charges. The proposal aims to prevent the Trump administration from trying to deport him before trial. CBS's Scott McFarlane is covering.
This is a proxy battle on a much bigger issue. How the Trump administration handles deportations, sending people to third-party nations where they're not from, and whether Abrego Garcia breaks that pattern.
In Texas, the search continues to find 170 people still missing from the catastrophic floods. Jonathan Lamb of the Kerrville Police Department.
The response here in Kirk County continues to expand as the mission becomes more technical. There's more than 2,100 responders on the ground here from state, local, and federal agencies.
There is a lot of relief in Los Angeles today after 31 workers were rescued from a tunnel that partially collapsed. CBS's Carter Evans on the recovery.
Workers stepped inside a metal cage that was hoisted by a crane to the surface. All trapped workers were safely extricated. No injuries were reported.
The tunnel will be used to carry treated wastewater to the Pacific Ocean. Russia pounded Ukraine again overnight, as Ramy Inocencio reports.
Russia launched 400 drones and 13 missiles, according to Ukrainian officials. Kyiv, we're seeing, the capital, was targeted hard.
In Malaysia, Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and said they exchanged new ideas.
I think it's a new and a different approach. I wouldn't characterize it as something that guarantees a peace, but it's a concept that, we'll take back to the president today.
New government data shows fewer Americans sought unemployment benefits last week. On Wall Street, stocks are higher today. Investors shrugging off the latest tariff worries. The Dow Jones Industrial's up 250 points. This is CBS News. The United Nations agency responsible for providing aid to children worldwide says those in the war zone in Ukraine are lacking access to basic goods and services. Matt Piper has that.
UNICEF says 3.5 million kids in Ukraine lack things like adequate food or shelter.
When adults, grown men make these decisions to wage war, it is children who pay the price.
Joe English is with UNICEF.
World leaders are meeting this week in Rome for the Ukraine Recovery Conference. And what we're doing is we're really urging leaders to make sure that children are at the center of the recovery plans. Because what we know is that rebuilding infrastructure is obviously critical, but rebuilding children's lives is absolutely essential.
Matt Piper, CBS News.
U.S. life expectancy plummeted during the COVID pandemic, and it still hasn't returned to normal levels. A study in JAMA looked at life expectancy in California, found it remained lower in 2024 than in 2019. I'm Cammie McCormick, CBS News.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
Yes, indeed, everybody. We are just under 55 minutes away from the close on this Thursday, July 10th. Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, live in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. And Tim, we are hovering near our highs of the session, but a mixed trade because we are seeing some pressure on the NASDAQ 100.
Yeah, it's the underperformer right now, up close to 0.2%. The S&P 500, though, up 0.3%, off our best levels of the day. The Dow up about 0.5 percentage point. We got a great program today, Carol. We just wrapped up an awesome conversation with Jim Latinsky over at MP Materials. You kind of said it at the top, we're going all in on rare earths today.
Totally.
We're going to be continuing our coverage with the CEO of Ramaco Resources. It's another stock that's just absolutely surging today.
Yeah, we'll get into the details why. Hey, also lots of news, always out of Elon Musk's universe. So the man who wrote the book on Twitter joins us on all things Elon, including the latest developments with Grok 4. I don't know if you've seen the video. Do I call it a video?
Is it kind of funny that you were sitting on like a stalled train this morning, like a more than 100-year-old technology.
It's me and Elon talking grok.
Watching a video about AI. So that's what you were doing. You were like, I can't get to the office right now. My train is stuck, but I'm going to watch this grok video.
And him talking about AI and all that its capabilities, and yet there I was stuck on my train. And the Express became a local.
You know, he also is working on the Boring Company to do tunnels. So
it's, man, on another plane, Hey, speaking of AI, those data centers will use a lot of energy. We've got the CEO who's trying to make them more efficient, one motor at a time. You're going to love this stuff. It's all coming your way over the next 2 hours.
First up, though, check of the day's trade and top business stories. Here he is, Charlie Pellet.
I thank you very much, Tim. We got some breaking news right now out of Apple. Our Mark Gurman is reporting that Apple is planning an ambitious pipeline of new products for release during the first half of 2026, including a new low-end iPhone, multiple iPads, and upgraded Macs. That story breaking right now on the Bloomberg Professional Service. We got Apple up by just about 0.8%. We'll bring you more details throughout the afternoon. So again, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all moving higher, on track for a record close on the S&P 500 index. 53 minutes to go. The S&P right now up 21, gain there of 0.3%. The Dow up 259, up 0.6. NASDAQ higher now by 33 for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That is a gain of 0.2%. Interestingly, while NASDAQ is pushing higher, the NASDAQ 100 Index is declining by 0.1%. The 10-year 4.34%, the 2-year 3.87%. Gold up $9 the ounce now, up 0.3%, 33.23 the ounce on the precious metal. And crude, big drop there, down 2.2%, 66.88 a barrel. Stocks higher. As for the economic outlook, Carol Schleif is Chief Investment Officer at BMO Family Office, and she was interviewed on Bloomberg Intelligence.
The economy has hung in, consumers have been resilient, and granted, there's cracks, there's some wear and tear on the economy, especially on the sides and under the hood, but by and large, the numbers continue to come through and things are pretty status quo.
And speaking of the economy and consumers, Delta Airlines reinstating its profit outlook for the year, says travelers are coming back. Delta right now up by 11.8%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie Pellet. Do appreciate it. Well, shares of Ramaco Resources surging today, up 30%, 29% right now, surging as much as 36% earlier in the session, reaching their highest in more than 2 years. This after the engineering and construction firm Fluor Corp completed a preliminary economic assessment of the company's new Brook Mine in Wyoming. The Brook Mine has rare earth elements like scandium and neodymium. It's also the first new rare earth mine in the U.S. in more than 70 years. We've got with us Randall Atkins, the founder, chairman, and CEO of Ramaco Resources. It's the $845 million market cap miner of metallurgical coal and rare earths. He joins us from Rochester, Wyoming, where tomorrow the ribbon will be cut at the official opening of the new Brook Mine carbon ore rare earth project. Also back with us is Joe Doe, formerly metals and mining reporter. He knows a ton about rare earths. Now his focus is on economic statecraft. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Randall, I want to start where we left off with Jim Litinsky over at MP Materials. We just had a long conversation with him just a few minutes ago about the Department of Defense investment in his company. Help our viewers and listeners understand where you play in the rare earths market versus where MP Materials plays. And is there any overlap there? Like, are you a competitor?
Well, I think, MP Materials has been around in one form or another for 70 years. It got started in 1952. As I said, or you said, we're going to be the first new mine since then, 70-odd years forward. They produce sort of the lighter rare earth elements. We produce the heavier and medium magnetics. And we also produce, or will produce, a number of critical materials and metals that will be very significant, like gallium and germanium and scandium. So we have sort of a different product slate. Most importantly, though, our stuff has been found in coal, somewhat remarkably. Coal is not radioactive. The material that MP mines, unfortunately, is radioactive and has been shipped to China to be processed, refined, and then, frankly, mostly sold over there. So we will be kind of a Team USA proposition. We will mine this coal in Wyoming. We will process it here into rare earths and critical minerals, and we will sell to domestic customers. So we're looking forward to getting started, and ground zero is tomorrow morning.
Hey, Randy, Joe Doe here. Thanks for coming on. I want to bring up a question that I've gotten from some of the investors in this space related to your new project. And the question that keeps coming up is, how are they actually going to separate the rare earths and process them?
Sure.
You, I know, have been explaining that it is possible, but I think there's still a lot of questions in the market because it's going to be a bit of a first of its kind, which always leaves a lot of question marks.
Sure, you bet. And what we have done is we have designed, as you know, Joe, they call it in engineering a flow sheet, which is kind of a critical path as to how you will, in essence, process and engineer as essentially an extraction and separation technique. So we will basically be taking our coal out. We will be doing a mild benefaction of that to kind of size it. And then we will use a processing which is conventional, where we will use certain leaching technologies, certain separation technologies, including physical and magnetic. And what we are doing is pretty conventional. The beauty, as I said, is because the coal is much softer than the material that most rare earths are found in, which is hard minerals. And of course, it is also not radioactive. So we don't have terbium, we don't have uranium, we don't have to deal with those issues, that we will have a much less complex form of processing. And Fluor, who knows a lot about it, certainly more than we do, has confirmed it's both commercially and, most importantly, technically feasible to use and process the way that is set forth in their document. The interesting thing, though, that I'll point out is, we have been involved in exploring a host of technology that could be applied to coal for probably over 10 years now. So we are in parallel working with the national labs of the Department of Energy on a number of novel technologies that might be deployed to even enhance the ways that coal can be processed. I mean, as things as laser technologies, even some ability to take microbes and proteins, train them to actually eat rare earth, for lack of a better description. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in the space, and this is kind of a ground zero proposition.
So Randy, to pull us back into rare earths, though, I mean, this announcement from the DoD and from MP Materials seems huge for them, but it also seems like the knock-on effect for you guys would be significant.
Well, I think if the stock market is any indicator, I think the answer to that is yes. So again, we have been kind of tied with the hip with the government for a long time. They're the ones that found this, frankly, about 8 years ago. And so we will certainly be involved in exploring with the government, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and others, how we can mutually be helpful to try and advance America's cause here, because we're in a mineral war, of course, with China, which we all know, and this mine is frankly large enough. We are at 1.7 million tons and climbing north of total rare earth oxides. The U.S. uses about 10,000 tons a year, so this mine could supply a rather ample portion of that requirement for decades and decades to come. So we'll look forward to exploring further how we can do business with the government.
Randy, can we assume that you're in similar talks with the Defense Department that we just saw with MP?
We have not entered into direct talks with the Defense Department, but we've certainly have had indirect outreaches in both directions.
Are you going to be more direct now that you see what the DoD has done and within its investment in MP Materials?
Would you be open to an investment?
Oh, sure. We will be open to considering whatever seems to make sense, of course, firstly for our shareholders, but also, of course, for the nation. And to the extent that this mine, which is frankly a potential national treasure, it certainly is something that we want to make sure that the Defense Department and other arms of the government can utilize its opportunity. So we will be certainly open to exploring things with the Defense Department.
Not to be Debbie Downer, but we all know the impact that coal can have on the environment. So I'm just curious, how do you make sure, whether it's coal mining that we know can lead to acid mine drainage, like there are lots of things that we have learned over the last 50, 100 years in terms of coal's impact. How do you prevent that?
Well, I tell you, Martha, the last time I was on your program, if you remember, one of my one-liners is coal is too valuable to burn. And I think this is certainly an apt point of exclamation on that thesis. So we have been really working for alternative uses of coal to make things like precursors for carbon fibers, synthetic graphites, graphenes, a number of different types of uses that people, frankly, wouldn't have thought coal could be used for. Candidly, the Chinese are using a lot of coal to do just this. They, frankly, use about close to 500 million tons a year for various types of coal to products. So, we are basically using this coal primarily for rare earths. There will be some use we can make of it for traditional thermal purposes. Yeah. But, as a practical matter, the main economic driver for this is rare earths.
Come back soon. Randall, thank you so much. Randall Atkins, founder, chairman, and CEO of Ramaco Resources, joining us, and of course, homage to our Joe Doe, who is unbelievable in the space and so much more. We are better because of it. Thank you. This is Bloomberg.
It's 3:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Developing story. Sources tell Bloomberg NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang meeting with President Trump at the White House today. Those sources say details of what the two men will discuss not immediately available. We do have NVIDIA shares trading higher. NVIDIA right now advancing by 0.7%. NVIDIA back above $4 trillion in terms of market cap. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. S&P up 22 at 6286, up by about 0.4%. The Dow up 254, up 0.6%. NASDAQ up 35. For the NASDAQ Composite Index, an advance of 0.2%. The NASDAQ 100 Index down 0.1%. 38 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell for the equity market. The 10-year 4.34%. With the 2-year 3.87%. Gold up 11.90 the ounce to 33.25, up 0.4 and a retreat for crude. West Texas Intermediate now at 66.89 a barrel. WTI down 2.2%. As for the economic backdrop heading into next week's inflation readings and retail sales, Nadia Lovell is senior strategist at UBS Financial Services. She was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak.
We don't expect to see any sort of major or lasting spike in inflation and any sort of major slowdown in the economy. We're looking for the economy in the next 6 months to probably grow under 1%, but again, not calling for any recession, and we think that we'll start to see that recovery with GDP sort of in that 1 to 2% range next year. So we do think that companies will be able to manage it, and again, I don't think that these tariffs are going to settle at these higher rates that are being threatened.
Nadia Lovell of UBS. Ferraro International has agreed to acquire WK Kellogg for an enterprise value of $3.1 billion. Kellogg surging by 30.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie Pellet. Lots of news in the Elon Musk universe. The billionaire, world richest person.
Nothing's ever going on in the Elon universe.
Every day. I think I could say that every day.
I know.
He makes it like that.
I feel like there's something every day.
Sometimes I go in and look for tweets that he wrote to cite them, and then it's like you have to scroll 30 tweets to find the one that he wrote like an hour ago.
And then Elon was with me on my train when I got stuck, and
Not
the train wasn't
literally.
moving. No, not literally.
Not literally.
Courtesy of X.
Well, you were watching that because the AI startup XAI is rolling out Grok 4 just months after releasing its previous iteration, underscoring the frenetic pace of AI development. You were all over that earlier this morning, Carol. The news coming the same day, though, yesterday, that Linda Yaccarino announced she was leaving the social media company X. Kurt Wagner is the guy to answer all of these questions about these things. He's Bloomberg News senior technology reporter. He covers all things social media. He's also the author of Battle for the Bird, Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, and the $44 billion fight for Twitter's soul. We'll talk about the company formerly known as Twitter in a second, but first I want to talk about Grok and really what Grok 4 is and how you compare it to what else is out there on the market, Kurt.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is that we're going to have to wait and see, right? We've heard Elon talk about Grok 4 and how great it's going to be and how, it's equivalent of every PhD student ever in the world combined and is smarter than that, right? But until you really get your hands on these things, it's hard to say. What I will say is the timing is interesting. You saw this week that the version of Grok that we have right now, Grok 3, was spewing this anti-Semitic stuff. And I think what that tells me is that no matter how good these chatbots get in terms of the technology, it still really depends on how they're trained and who is sort of filling the information into these bots, right? Because Grok 4 could be the most advanced thing of all time. If it's spewing anti-Semitic comments to users on X, it really doesn't matter, right? And so to me, we need to sort of wait and see. I realize that's a bit of an unfulfilling answer to this question, but it's just too early. And all we have right now is sort of Elon's praise for the bot to go off of.
Grok also coming to a Tesla soon near you. This is what Elon Musk said too. So what is that? Like, is that just giving more data to Grok? Like, I don't know. What's that connection? I guess I get it on some level because it's the Elon universe, but what is that?
I was going to say, like, the Elon universe is like this ever morphing, melding thing. We've talked about, the three of us have talked about this before, but like this idea that one corner of his universe just kind of gets pulled into the other, this is pretty common. So I'm not surprised, but this is how I'm thinking of it. And again, new information like this can all evolve, but hands-free, right? Like the idea that maybe you're already using self-driving, but let's pretend you're doing it the old-fashioned way. You're driving yourself around and you want to safely, figure out the best route to where you're headed. You need to ask about a headline you thought about earlier. You want to make a call. Like, you want a voice assistant that is ultimately high quality, that's going to be able to do all those things safely, right? So maybe in a perfect world, Grok serves as your co-passenger, your co-pilot here on a trip, so that you're not like pulling out your phone or tinkering with the screen in the Tesla. Now, I think a lot of this is sort of idealistic because we need to see how this is implemented, and also, again, like, how good is Grok? Is it reliable enough to do those types of things? But I think in the perfect world, imagine it as the hands-free co-pilot there for you in your car.
Well, if you bring up the point about some of the challenges that Grok 3 has had that has been well documented in terms of coming up with anti-Semitic posts and the like on X, and sort of what we've seen shared out there, Kurt. How do we know if Grok 4, or how does XAI solve this if it hasn't really solved this for Grok 3?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the challenge, and I think the issue too is like the anti-Semitic comments that came out of Grok 3. Those happened just over the last couple of days. Grok 3 has been out for months before that, right? But there was a tweak. Elon was talking about like a tweak to the chatbot, and all of a sudden it's now sharing these really horrible posts. And so these things can evolve very quickly depending on, again, what type of information is put into it, what type of guardrails are in place for how these bots should or should not respond. So I'm certainly not in a position where I'm like, oh, they fixed it, Grok 4 is going to go off without a hitch. I think the timing of the incidents they had with Grok 3 right before this rollout actually make me much more skeptical about Grok 4. But again, we sort of need to wait and see. They clearly, at the very least, acknowledged that was a problem, right? Sometimes they've had issues and they just kind of refuse to even acknowledge the issue. In this case, they acknowledged, hey, this was inappropriate. These types of answers should not have been coming. I know the bar is incredibly low, guys, but I take that as a good sign.
I am wondering, Kurt, that Elon's time in the government and Doge, how much, can we make any assumption that there was information and data that he had access to that is kind of going into Grok? Will we ever even know?
It's a great question. It's one we've been all asking about actually for months. There was this idea, you may remember, when he asked employees of the government to basically say, hey, here are the 5 things I did this week, right? Like basically justify your job. Send us an email with what you did. There was speculation around that time that, the only way to really sift through thousands and thousands of emails of a list of 5 accomplishments was to rely on AI. Now, as far as I know, there was no reporting that sort of confirmed, hey, Grok was being used, or that certainly sensitive government information was being put into Grok, or that Grok was being trained on that type of stuff. But again, there was a lot of speculation, given what Elon does, given his focus on this AI, that maybe it was used behind the scenes to sort of, help with some of these tasks, maybe help with where cuts should be coming from or not coming from. I don't recall, again, that ever being confirmed with reporting, but I think you're asking a question that a lot of us have been asking for months now, was there a relationship there beyond, just the way anyone could use it publicly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk about X, Carol.
Let's go there.
Kurt, your morning newsletter that I read earlier today about your view on Linda Yaccarino leaving the company formerly known as Twitter, X. I think you were like many people who thought she wouldn't actually last 2 years at the company, given the history of high-profile people at some of these companies and sort of just what was happening at X in the early days. What do we know about her exit, why she's leaving, and sort of what this means for the social media platform moving forward?
So we don't know a ton beyond. I can tell you that this has been in the works since well before this most recent Grok thing. As far as I know, I don't want to say that wasn't a factor necessarily, but it wasn't like she was all in 5 days ago and suddenly she's all out. I think that this was something that had been in the works coming before this. Now, whether the Grok incidents, expedited a timeline or not, I can't say for certain, but I think this is something she was planning to do before. Now, what this signals to me, and what I try to get across in that newsletter, is that this might not just be a change of leadership at the company. It could be a change of identity at the company, right? Because when Linda Yaccarino was hired, she is a well-known, or was a well-known, media executive, advertising executive. And so this was a signal that, hey, advertising is sort of the bread and butter. This is how we'll continue to make money. That's where the person in charge of this company has her time, energy, and focus. If Yaccarino is replaced by someone with an AI background, or an engineer, a product person who's not focused on advertising in the same way, I think we could be witnessing sort of a transition of X as an ads platform to X as something completely different. It may be that fighting with advertisers for 0.5% of the global advertising market is no longer worth their time and attention, and instead this platform becomes a data provider for Grok or other AI products in the future. And so that was sort of what I was getting at in this newsletter, is like, this might not just be the end of her time there. This might also be the end of us thinking of this as like an ads business. And maybe we need to start thinking about what X can become in a different way.
Like a media company being used for some other end. Some of it, might be for folks who want to have, a mouthpiece or so on and so forth, or like, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting.
That makes me concerned about the data that X is getting, or that XAI would get. Because
that's not great data?
Yeah. Like, I mean, what they say, Kurt, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, my feed, I'm sure it's my fault, but there's a lot of stuff on there that's not necessarily the correct answer to things.
Well, Grok's already being trained on X data, and that might explain in some ways why we saw what we saw, with these anti-Semitic posts over the last couple of days, right? Is that it has to be trained to think that way or say those types of things. And if you are taking the fire hose of posts from X and putting them into Grok, that might be the outcome that you get in some instances. And so it's not new. This idea that, Grok is suddenly going to be trained on X, like, this is already happening. Yeah. I think for me, it's more like, is that kind of the sole purpose of why X exists moving forward? Is it sort of like Elon Musk's personal sort of megaphone playground plus the training fuel for AI stuff that makes the real money down the line? That feels to me like where we might be headed. Now, they could surprise us. They could replace Linda Yaccarino with some other major advertising executive, and all of a sudden I'll come back and talk with you about it and say, hey, my take was certainly wrong. But I think her stepping aside sort of paves the way for them to leave advertising behind a little bit and move in a different direction.
Kurt, just quickly, 25 seconds though. Are advertisers really going to come back in a big way as long as Elon is somehow political in whatever form that is? Just quickly.
This has been the Achilles heel for this company since he took over, is that you have a brand advertising business, but you have an owner who constantly does and posts things that are not necessarily brand friendly or brand safe. And so that's been the rub. And until he sort of changes the way he behaves on X, I just don't see that really being settled anytime soon.
All right, Tesla shares, though, we should point out, up about 4% in today's trade. Hey, Kurt Wagner, so appreciate it. Bloomberg News senior technology reporter covering social media. Coming up next, we're driving to the close with Veronica Willis over at Wells Fargo Investment Institute. Carol Master, Tim Stenvik. This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
It's 3:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. 20 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. With the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they're all advancing. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Shaw. That's right. U.S. stocks trading in the green right now, with the Dow currently up 260 points. S&Ps are higher by 23, and NASDAQ gains 0.2%. The U.S. 10-year yield is at 4.35. Gold is in the green, oil is in the red, and Bitcoin, that's higher by 2.5%. Among the main 11 S&P sectors, leaders were consumer discretionary and utilities. Telecom was under pressure, and leaders to the upside in the Dow, American Express and McDonald's, while Salesforce fell 2.2% and led to the downside. After earnings, ConAgra fell 5% to its lowest level since 2012, while Delta Airlines jumped as much as 14%. In deal news, Kellogg is being acquired for $23 a share in cash. And wrapping things up, Fed's daily sees 2 cuts in 2025 as the likely outcome. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill Maloney. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type Squawk, SQUA, on your Bloomberg terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. This is not a toy. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. It's
the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
The funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, TikTok, everybody. Just coming up on about 18 minutes to go until we wrap up the trade on this Thursday. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic, live in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. You heard both Bill and Charlie breaking down the trade, and we are hovering near our highs of this session. We'll see if ultimately we can get another record close here on the S&P 500, but quite a run and quite a bounce back from that near, was it bear market correction? I know I always do that.
You are going on vacation soon, so...
I don't even drink a lot of beer. Bear beer.
Yeah, we're up 25% roughly since April 2nd.
I know, so quite a bounce back, right? So let's see what Veronica Willis has to say about all of it. She's global investment strategist at Wells Fargo Investment Institute. They've got about $44 billion in assets under management. And she is joining us from New York. Hey, Veronica, good to have you here with us. It's been an interesting market year, and it's, we're about halfway through. Talk to us about what's kind of top of mind for you as we get ready for another earnings season. We continue to digest trade tariff news that seems to continue to come out of the White House. What's top of mind about the investment environment for you?
Yeah, I think top of mind right now is to expect a little bit more volatility for the rest of the year. The market's seen a really impressive rally from those lows earlier this year. Maybe has gotten a little bit ahead of itself. There's still some uncertainties related to trade. We've got, earnings season coming up, which could start to see some of those impacts around that uncertainty around prices and uncertainty around tariffs. So it could be, a little bit more volatility to come for the rest of the year.
A little bit more or maybe a lot more if these tariffs stay in effect come August 1st?
It's really dependent on, what we see ultimately for the end state for the tariffs. And that's where all of the uncertainty is. So we don't really know what those are going to look like. The worst case scenario is going to cause a lot of volatility for the markets. If they're not as aggressive as what they've currently been announced, if we're able to get some negotiations between the U.S. and some of the trading partners, then we could see a little bit less volatility.
So I am curious, you guys have a bunch of strategists, a bunch of analysts. I can only imagine some of the conversations you're having back and forth. And I do wonder if you feel like you have more questions about the outlook or more answers. Do you feel like there is more things that you can kind of cross off your list?
There are definitely a lot of questions and then a lot of scenarios as the answers for those questions. So that's a lot of what we're talking about are, the different tariff scenarios and how that might impact the economy. With the signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that takes one uncertainty off of the table. So we know what the fiscal policy is. We don't know quite what the full impact is going to be to the economy. So that's still a question as well. So it's a really interesting time with a lot of questions.
Yeah, I feel like more questions than answers for a lot of investors out there. We've spoken to some people this week who have said, hey, that August 1st deadline for tariffs, we see that as serious in the sense that we don't think the president is going to extend that deadline again like he did from July 9th. Remember, yesterday was supposed to be the day that the extension expired, but it was extended this week to August 1st. What's your view on that?
I think there's always the possibility that it'll continue to be extended, whether the president says that it will be or not. So that's exactly what we saw with the July 9th deadline. So that's always one of the possibilities. Then there's always that possibility that we start to see some agreements and some negotiations happening and get some more clarity before that August 1st deadline. So there's really just a lot up in the air.
All right, so there's a lot coming at investors, and yet we talked about this with our Gina Martin-Adams of our Bloomberg Intelligence team. She follows and covers and directs U.S. equity universe coverage for us here at Bloomberg Intelligence. Torsten Slok over at Apollo also has a note, and noting the concentration, extreme concentration in the S&P 500, returning to extreme levels, with the top 10 companies accounting for 40% of the index's market capitalization and a record high share of earnings. And Gina talked too about some of the Mag 7 names, that the outperformance of big tech names, NVIDIA hitting $4 trillion in market cap yesterday. Investors are really moving into those names, and maybe it's not as much of a broadening out. Is that a dangerous sign for you? What's your read on that and what it says about the investment environment? And once again, see that concentration.
That is a concern. And, we've seen it play out throughout the past couple of years where, the Mag 7 was pretty much the only thing driving performance for the S&P 500 as a whole. And if we return to that type of environment, any kind of shocks in any of those big names, that's going to be what drives the market down, and it can happen really quickly. And so we like to see that performance broaden out a little bit to believe that we're in a more sustainable rally. So that's part of why we're thinking there's still going to be some volatility throughout the year. We're not necessarily buying into the belief that we're just straight up from here. We need to see that performance broaden out a bit.
What about when it comes to geographical performance? There was a big narrative at the beginning of the year and even toward the middle of this most recent quarter, really focused on the outperformance of equities outside of the United States, specifically European equities. What are your views geographically for the second half of the year?
So we do think that, that global diversification, having that exposure to the international equities is important as part of a diversified portfolio. So that's played out really well this year. We think it will still play out well throughout the rest of this year. But we do think eventually when U.S. economic growth starts to recover later in this year, early 2026, that we'll start to see that U.S. outperformance resume.
One thing I want to ask you before we wrap up here on this Thursday, bank earnings kick off next week. JP Morgan coming out along with the other big banks. I'm looking at the KBW Bank Index. It is up it's up about 38% year to date. I was going to say almost 40%, not year to date, forgive me, from that April 4th low. So we have seen a tremendous rally. Overall, the index is up 13% year to date, and that easily is about double what we've seen in terms of the return for the S&P 500. So some mega outperformance. What do we need to see in terms of earnings to justify the moves that we've seen already? Or do you think there is room to continue moving higher? And again, just got about 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, I do think there is still some room to move higher. The market's expecting some deregulation that should benefit the banks. And so I think that's driven a lot of that performance in, financials overall. I think with earnings next week, we'll need to see some kind of follow through. So we need to see some good earnings reports from these banks to buy into that rally. So it'll be really important to watch.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Hey, Veronica, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Veronica Willis, Global Investment Strategist at Wells Fargo Investment Institute. They've got roughly $44 billion in assets as of February of this year. So good to get her view. We are marching towards the close, just about 10 minutes away. We're looking at a market where we're hovering near our best levels of the session. What does that mean? We're up about 19 points on the S&P 500, 1/3 of 1%. Tim, the Dow, though, up about 0.5%.
We could see a record close. Carol Masser, the highest since December 13th, 1961 at this point.
We'll see.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Nasser and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody. In just a few minutes, we're going to head over to our TV colleagues, Romaine Bostick and Katie Greifeld. We're going to count you down to the close on this Thursday. We'll see whether or not we can get another record close on the S&P 500. Last was July 3rd, 62.79.35. And Tim, we're not quite there.
We were when I said we were. Excuse me, I got to turn my microphone.
We were intraday, right?
We were.
Yeah.
5 minutes ago when I said we were, but this is what happens, Carol.
I know. A market moves.
Market moves until 4 o'clock.
Until it closes.
Hey, something else that kind of moves is Apple's pipeline of products. Mark Gurman. Of course, Mark Gurman.
I don't think he sleeps.
You think?
I just don't think he does. Like, his constant, stuff.
It's pretty incredible.
It is pretty impressive.
He's reporting that Apple's planning an ambitious pipeline of new products for release during the first half of next year, including a new low-end iPhone, multiple iPads, and upgraded Macs.
And Apple investors are like, oh, because the stock's only up about 0.6%. Yeah, I don't know.
Budget smartphone, the 17E.
I think that could be a big deal.
You think so?
I don't
Why?
know.
Outside of the U.S.?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Right, we've always talked about, right, a lower cost.
They've tried.
I know. And
so many times.
The lineup due by spring of next year, as Tim mentioned, updates to Apple's entry-level tablet and iPad Air, as well as an external Mac monitor, according to people with knowledge. Budget smartphone, dubbed the iPhone 17e, will be a follow-up to a $599 model that Apple launched earlier this year.
The new iPad will replace the low-end iPad. $349 is what it's charged now. This will come around March or April of next year. The new model will look like the current version, but include a faster chip. Today's offering has an A16 processor that was first released back in 2022. When are you going to get a new Apple Watch, Carol?
It's so funny. What have you talking? I know. My husband's like, go get it. And I started wearing my old watches, my old.
Because you have the oldest. You have the first generation or second generation?
I know. If it's first generation, it would be like,
what year was
hey,
that?
put it up on eBay or whatever.
The second generation Apple Watch.
I thought it was so cool when I had it.
When did that come? When did that come out?
A while ago. When did it come out? Was the second generation?
Not the second generation. But you have the second version, right?
Second version.
Yeah, the second version. Okay.
It was definitely, obviously, pre-pandemic. It was a while ago.
Oh, that was I think it was before.
Okay.
I think it was during the Obama administration. I'm not joking.
All I know is, okay. And this is kind of a little tease forward for a story we're going to talk about with our TV colleagues, hopefully, if we have time. They came out with Hermes, watch bands.
Okay.
And I really loved it. And so that with the technology, I love kind of the old and the new.
Okay, hold on.
So that's when they first introduced those bands.
The first generation Apple Watch
right.
came out in 2015, like I said, during the Obama administration.
2015. What are you saying? Yeah. And it was the first Hermes Apple Watch bands.
And then you got the second one.
That's what I got.
You got it in 2015?
Yeah. It was a collaboration between those two.
So now it's the 10th anniversary. You could do it now.
I like it, but I pulled out my old watches, and I'm kind of loving wearing
the ones without screens.
Yeah. These little things. They have little faces, and I don't have to wind it, but it's kind of nice.
Okay, cool.
I don't know. I love the technology. I love being able to answer texts. I even took phone calls on it.
Why do you think investors are not excited about these new Apple products today? Is it because, of course, these are coming?
I guess.
And these, because that's what Apple does with its refresh cycle?
I guess, but they're also saying that the new products, according to Mark Gurman in his reporting, the new products are part of a push to get back to a more consistent revenue growth following this fall's iPhone launch. They said after a pandemic-fueled sales surge, Mark writes, after a pandemic-fueled sales surge in the early part of the decade, Apple has suffered from spottier demand the past 2 years. A slower rollout of new models, including iPads, contributed to the slump. I think they need a car.
Excuse me?
Apple car?
Apple car, that's not happening.
Well.
Not happening.
So you think. You never know.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Although I do know because Mark Gurman reported that the project has been abandoned.
I know. I don't know. Going to keep a watch. Let's get serious.
A watch?
Let's get serious. We're in a little bit of a cuckoo mood. Do not go anywhere. You know who's going to set us straight? Our TV colleagues. We're going to count you down to the close on this Thursday. The closing bell starts right now.
Closing Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic alongside Katie Greifeld, taking you through to the closing bell with a global simulcast. It starts now. Carol Massar in the radio booth alongside Tim Stenovic. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, television, radio, our partnership with YouTube. And I'm going to give you the headline number, Carol Massar. What? 6280.32. That is where the S&P is right now, just barely a point above its record high.
July 3rd, 6279.35. So, yeah, we'll see whether or not we will keep it there. Right now, it's just fractionally above. We're going to see. I got to tell you, airlines doing their job trying to push the, or they have pushed the market a lot higher. That is some outperformance in that sector, but we'll see whether or not it's enough to give the S&P another record. Can I just point? Airlines are up 11% as a group today.
Yeah, United up 14, Delta up 12, even Southwest, little old Southwest up 8%.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, there's a risk on mood sort of taking markets. We saw a new record for Bitcoin, now up above 113,000. Just in the last 3 days, Katie, Bitcoin up 5%.
I know you've been following that closely as the co-host of Bloomberg Crypto. Also adding to that risk on mood, the VIX, as we've been talking about, the VIX trading with a 15 handle. How low can it go? I don't know.
How low can it go? I do just want to point out, too, there is still some concern in this market, particularly when it comes to tariffs. We had the earnings this morning out of ConAgra. That was a big miss with regards to the guidance, and that was directly related to tariffs. And also should point out that a lot of the stocks overseas that are affected by tariffs, particularly in Brazil, really under pressure today, like Embraer, some of the meatpacking companies, as well as we still keep a focus right now on trade policy and how that could upend this record rally. Let's walk you through the numbers. And we're going to start with Katie's favorite, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, up a cap-weighted index, up more than 190 points on the day. It's going to close higher by about 0.4%. The NASDAQ Composite up 20 points, or 0.1%. And let's take a look at the S&P 500. It takes a while for these numbers to settle, but right now, 6280.37. If that holds, that will be a record high, up about 0.3% on the day. Remember, the last record high was right around 6279.30 and change, so it looks like we are going to close above that level. The Russell 2000 getting in on the action as well. The relative outperformer up 0.5%.
Kind of amazing. Just barely a record, but it still makes it a record. So as it settles in, it does look like another record close for the S&P. Having said that, digging down into the index, Katie, you've got 352 names in the S&P 500 gaining ground on this Thursday, 149 to the downside and 2 unchanged.
Yeah, big broad gains. Tim said risk on rather, and this is what it looks like. If you take a look at the sector level as well, you had 9 sectors in the green. You had just 2 in the red. Consumer discretionary was your biggest points gainer when it comes to that. I think this is a really healthy sign, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. You hit this record just barely.
She says so herself.
If I say so myself.
If you disagree, get in touch.
Or don't, that's fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, we hit this record high, and that's even with tech falling on the day.
Phone number? No.
So it's not just big tech that's propping up the rally here.
All right.
Katie's getting flashbacks to when she was anchoring the show permanently. She just knows you just got to move forward when everybody interrupts you. You just got to keep going.
Keep going, keep going. All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers.
Was that a reference to me?
No. Yes.
Okay.
Well, all right, airlines, we talked about outperformance. Delta Airlines, the reason why this went up about 12% here at the close. It's actually the number 2 gainer in the S&P. United beat it out, up 14%. United also hinting, was it last night, yesterday?
Yeah, last night with the 8K.
Giving out a little bit in terms of some financials, so kind of teasing ahead of those Delta earnings this morning. But nonetheless, Delta up about 12% here in today's session. We know the news, reinstated a profit outlook for the year, expecting an adjusted profit of $5.25 to $6.25 a share. The CEO talking about travelers coming back, corporate travel strengthening, so the whole group to the upside. Got to talk about MP Materials, man. This one was up 50% in today's session. It's a rare earth magnet producer, and it struck a multi-billion-dollar public-private deal, actually, with the Department of Defense. They're going to build a new magnet plant. They're also going to expand rare earth capabilities, backed by $400 million in equity and a $1 billion loan commitment. We actually talked to the co-founder and CEO. We talked about that three-part investment. It's kind of fascinating. He talked about how it's going to really up their capabilities in terms of production, but we had a lot of questions about what it means about whether or not this is becoming a state-owned enterprise.
I caught a big part of the interview, but I couldn't hear the end of it. Did he talk about when we're actually going to start seeing stuff actually come out the ground?
We actually ran out of time. We talked about it with Joe Doe afterwards. But what Joe Doe said, that there was a 12-month, I believe, schedule in terms of when it's going to come out. They've laid some of that out. So, yeah. So about a year, but they've kind of put some of this stuff out there, right? Didn't he say?
Yeah, the mine has been around for 70 years, though. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You
can keep going.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't you have another one?
No, she loves her pauses.
Man, pop the bubble.
Is that it?
The balloon. No.
That's it.
Okay.
No, Ramaco Resources. I got another one. Small market cap shares were up about 30% in today's session. If you don't know the ticker, it's METC. Fluor completed a preliminary economic assessment of the company's Brook Mine located in Wyoming. This is a mine that also has rare earth elements. It's basically going to have to separate those rare earth elements, they're heavy elements, from coal. So there's a lot going on. Why are you guys all looking at me so strange? We did talk to the company's CEO, Randall Atkins. So, yeah, it's a really interesting interview. You guys are just...
I was just thinking about my introduction to geology course in college and how it's coming in so useful when you're talking about these
I'm just saying,
rare
we did a lot of conversations about rare earth and like the government being very actively involved with some of the companies.
I think you could say we dug deep today.
Okay.
For rare
Don't
earths.
go there.
All right.
I just got to
Oh, you have another one?
Yeah, well, you took...
Okay. Almost over.
Sorry.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Carol.
I'm moving on. I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm done. I'm done.
Timothy.
I'm so out. I'm so out. All yours, baby.
All right, let's go with Vertiv Holdings. This company fell 6% today. It's actually down as much as 14% earlier in the session. The company provides data center cooling solutions, and shares fell after Amazon's AWS builds now equipment designed to cool NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs. Analysts are concerned that, the growth of this company may suffer if Amazon is actually coming out with a product similar to what it does. Bloomberg intelligence analyst Mustafa Oker said AWS rolling out its own server liquid cooling system could weigh on Vertiv's future growth prospects. Once again, shares fell by about 6%. Autodesk, among the worst performers in the S&P 500 today. Bloomberg News reported that the company is weighing an acquisition of the rival software provider PTC Inc. That's according to people familiar with the matter. Interestingly enough, shares of PTC also fell more than Autodesk today, down 7.6%. And finally, Carol mentioned airlines doing well. What about this company, Embraer? You brought it up, Romaine, the concern about those tariffs on Brazil. ADRs fell 4.7% today after President Trump said he will impose 50% tariffs on goods from the country. Jefferies is estimating that U.S. tariffs would add about $350 million to the cost of a jet from Embraer. We talked to Sheila Kaialu of Jefferies earlier. She said Textron could actually be a winner from this. They make Bell, Cessna, Beechcraft, and Hawker aircraft and compete with Embraer. Also, watch American Airlines, she said, because they're at risk to pay more given the backlog. They've got 90 of these jets on order out of an order book of about 250 aircraft.
All right, let's get a quick check on yields. A relatively subdued day despite some trepidation heading into today because of the 30-year auction that seemed to do okay. You see the divergence, though, in yields, and that's going to continue to be a big part of the story. Looking at that 30-year yield, just ever so slightly down. In fact, we'll just call it unchanged on the day. But, of course, the real value out there today, guys, isn't in financial markets. It's in the auction market.
Yes.
The original Birkin bag, the original Birkin bag.
I know.
Sold.
Romaine, I want to say thank you so much. I can't wait to get it. Thank you. I know it cost you $10 million, but it was the one that Jane Birkin owned. It was made about 40 years ago. There's a great story about her being on a plane, and an executive, I believe it was from Hermes, and kind of said, she used to carry a basket around, with all her stuff. And she's like, could you make me a bag that could carry all my stuff? And she actually, drew it on, I think, a vomit bag.
Really?
On the airplane.
Yeah, what I love about this too is that, I mean, they talk about the seller, this woman, Catherine B., who basically runs a very famous boutique store in Paris that specializes in vintage handbags. She bought this bag years ago, when no one seems to know the exact price for it, but she picked it up at auction. Presumably, she made a pretty healthy profit on it. I think I saw an interview with her today in the New York Times where she basically said that this was by far her biggest deal of all time.
I bet it was. She kept it in like a safe. I think the temperatures were controlled. There were little angels around it singing, ah! Like, it was really good stuff.
Wow.
Wow.
This was fun. I haven't done this in a while.
Yeah. You should come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I will.
I will not be back tomorrow.
You know, I think I have like an original, Ralph Lauren wallet from when I was a teenager.
Not the same, baby.
Would that go for anything?
Not the same. I'm just going to say, well, whenever you want to give us the
old
Birkin.
bottle of Dracar Noir.
Oh, now you're bringing back memories.
Taco Rabon.
Did you really wear that?
I was a teenager once.
Oh my God.
We all were.
Yeah.
We just learned so much about it.
Just an awkward, silly teenager.
Okay, that is a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We do it all, everybody. I will not be back until about a week or so. I'm going to take a little vacation time.
Have fun. We will miss you.
I hope you will.
All right.
Listen, just take care of the universe, okay, for us, everybody? All right. They're going to continue on TV. We're going to continue on radio. We, or some of us, will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
All right, everybody, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week Daily. Carol Masser, Tim Stenivek. Yep, we're having some fun, but here's something some would say was a little serious, just crossing the Bloomberg terminal. This is coming from the White House Director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, and he is saying that the new Fed head can take a close look at the agency size. And I'm just thinking, this is kind of interesting. I'm not quite sure if he's talking about the size of the Fed. It's kind of a weird little headline, but I am just thinking about what we just heard or earlier when Mike Pence was on air with us and talking about, he's apparently on Fox Business right now, Kevin Hassett. So we're just looking for a little bit more in terms of these headlines. But I'm not sure if it plays into some of what Mike Pence talked about, the Fed being not necessarily needing to be a separate agency. So I don't know. We're gonna try and get some clarity because these headlines are just a little sparse.
Yeah, they are. They are, and we'll bring you other headlines from this interview that Kevin Hassett is doing if they are pertinent. Remember, he might be one of the people who could be nominated to be the new Fed chair.
I think the significance of all of this and why we kind of certainly share it with the Bloomberg audience is that we continue to see comments, certainly from President Trump in terms of Fed Chair Jay Powell and what he would like to see him do in terms of interest rates, but also pressure on the Fed head. And then, of course, the conversation about what global investors will certainly agree with, the importance of having an independent central bank, whether it's at the U.S. central bank or a European central bank. Investors, this is important for them.
Can we talk Nutella chocolate?
Yes, we can. Oh,
Thank
please,
you.
please,
Okay.
please, please.
Thank you. Shares of WK Kellogg surged 30% today after Ferrero International agreed to acquire the company for an enterprise value of $3.1 billion. It pushes the Italian family-owned candy business further into the lucrative U.S. market. Carol and I are a little bit obsessed with this story from a lot of different angles. Like, why does the maker of Nutella, Kinder, Keebler, and Tic Tac, to name a few, want Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, and Raisin Bran? Dina Shanker is going to help answer some of those questions and really what's going on in the snack food space here in the U.S. She's Bloomberg Business Week writer who focuses on the food industry. She joins us from Westchester County, New York. So WK Kellogg, not to be confused with Kellanova, the snack food brand that is being sold to Mars as we speak for about $30 billion. This is the cereal company, the Frosted Flakes, the Fruit Loops, the Crispix, the Raisin Bran. Why would Ferrero want these assets?
Well, I think what we've seen generally in packaged food is just more moves towards consolidation to try to protect their market share. And Ferrero, being such a European company, wants to grab more U.S. Dollars from consumers. I mean, it is a little, I mean, it's a little odd because cereal has been on the decline for a long, long time. And that decline is not, nobody's expecting people to run back to the cereal aisle. So, and if anything, actually, Kellogg has been under specific pressure from this administration since before they won the election, because they've been the target of the Food Babe campaign to drop the artificial dyes from their Fruit Loops. And while many of the other companies, packaged food companies, have announced plans to drop their artificial dyes, Kellogg has not. So, in some ways, it sort of makes sense, because a lot of what Kellogg sells is sort of glorified candy in the form of cereal. I say this as somebody who stocks it in my house and pretends it's a real breakfast. Yeah, so Ferrero being a candy company, I guess you could say it makes sense in that way.
I also do wonder about what it means in terms of a very well-established U.S. brand and the infrastructure it has in terms of, exposure and presence in stores. Like, does that give Ferrero a little bit of an edge here in the U.S. as it tries to even grow its own brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely the distribution and shelf space helps it. The conversations that those, that the company salespeople have with the buyers at the supermarket now can change a bit, because they're more familiar with them. And anytime you have a European company picking up an American company, it gives them a nice, stronger foothold here. So that's definitely an option. Of course, Ferrero also is a big seller of chocolate and candy, which are also not categories that are doing super well these days. Cocoa prices have been up for a long time. Sales have by units were down in 2024. So what we're seeing is companies that want, their synergies, they want to save money when they want to buy in bigger quantities and sell probably at more competitive prices. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see about that one. But these are not categories that are booming right now. So it should be interesting to see how this plays out.
Is this like the end of an iconic American company? Kellogg's, as we mentioned, split into these two different companies. Kellanova, that's being bought by Mars, the private family-owned company that is known for snacks, but also like vet clinics and at this point, and dog food and pet food and stuff. And then, you have a European company buying WK Kellogg Co., or, KLG ticker. Is this kind of the end of just an American stalwart when it comes to what's been around for like over 100 years?
Well, the company may be ending, but the brands live on. And I think that's really what we American consumers really know are the brands.
So don't shed a tear for Fruit Loops.
Yeah, I'm not crying about it. Also, they are going to maintain some office, their Battle Creek, Michigan offices, which is really great for Battle Creek, and keeps the Kellogg vibes continuing. So I think Kellogg will. I hope, I visited Kellogg in Battle Creek years ago, and they had this great archive of they were showing me like the Eggo boxes from the year I was born, which was great because I ate a lot of Eggo waffles as a kid. And I hope they still keep all that stuff, and I imagine that they will.
I have my Cheerios every morning, as you know.
You do. I had Cheerios today also. What is replaced?
What is General Mills?
That's General Mills. Yeah. So what is replaced cereal? Dina, just in the last 30 seconds that we have with you, is it yogurt? Like, what are we doing now?
Tim has yogurt.
So certainly people are eating like more high protein stuff, but actually in the cereal aisle, granola is doing really well.
That's just sugar.
So it is a lot of sugar. You can you can find some healthier versions, but people do sometimes think they're getting something healthier and they're not.
I think, doesn't Kellogg own Bare Naked, the granola company?
They do, and I believe that is one of their stronger brands.
Okay.
Maybe you'll put a little chocolate on those frosted flakes.
People are also buying more private label. I should just add that.
That's
because
true.
Private label is always less expensive and often almost the exact same thing.
Interesting segment. Obviously, Ferraro sees some value there, and we'll see how it all plays out. Hey, Dina, thank you. Dina Schenker, she's Bloomberg Business Week writer. She focuses on the food industry. It's always fun to check in with her, and it always makes me hungry.
Go get some Cheerios. General Mills.
I'm going to eat my banana. I'm just going to say. All right, coming up next, man trying to make data centers more efficient, one motor at a time. That's coming up.
It's 421 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. A record day on the S&P 500 index. And this update, this Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses, Oracle's offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. For new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, see if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Earnings out of Levi Strauss, stock surging after hours, up 8%. Levi raising its revenue outlook, expecting sales growth to outweigh the impact of President Trump's tariffs. Again, after hours, we're looking at Levi Strauss up 7.71%. And by the way, in the year-to-date column, Levi Strauss up by 14%. A record for the S&P 500 index, finishing the Thursday session at 6280, up 17 points today, up by about 0.3%. The Dow up 192, up 0.4%. NASDAQ up 19, a gain of 1%. S&P 500 index adding 0.3%, 9 of the 11 sectors rising. 10-year 4.34%, the 2-year 3.86%. Spot gold up 0.3%, 33.24 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.2%, 66.89 a barrel. So again, recapping, an 8% jump for Levi Strauss after hours after earnings, another record for the S&P 500 index, taking out the old high on July 3rd. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie. Do appreciate it. Well, the U.S. is grappling with how it will generate enough power to run the AI boom. Our own Josh Saul reported yesterday that regulators in Ohio, which is a key data center market, ruled that data centers will have to pay for some of the energy requests, regardless of whether the electricity ends up being needed. The way that data centers pay for power has become a controversial point as the facilities consume more electricity, forcing costly infrastructure spending on new transmission lines and power plants. Well, our next guest is trying to make data centers a bit more efficient. Brian Casey is the CEO of ECM. The company designs PCB stator electric motors, partners with companies such as L3Harris, East West Manufacturing Group, Thrustmaster, and more. Brian joins us from Massachusetts. Brian, good to have you back on the program. It's been over a year since we last spoke to you. I want you, please, to remind everybody where exactly your company plays, because you essentially offer this software solution, this sort of full stack solution when it comes to designing something that's incredibly important to everyday use.
Yeah, thanks. First off, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us on again. It's great to be with you guys. So our software ultimately materializes with our clients who are, large HVAC manufacturers, large pump manufacturers, and ultimately they're downstream, and they're the ones that are doing the cooling and moving the fluids around in these large data centers.
So the data center business is not your only business. I mean, I don't think last time we even talked about data centers last time you were on.
No, we didn't.
What is the biggest portion of your business?
Fittingly, it's HVAC is probably the HVAC market is probably one of the larger markets we serve. And like I said, that's going in condensers, plenum fans, big kind of air movement stuff. And those clients, they ultimately will serve large industrials, hospitals, institutions, colleges, and of course, our friends in the raised floor environment data centers.
Okay. So I hope we don't sound like idiots, but we spent a fair amount of time on our planning call.
Just wait till we speak before you say no, Brian.
And we love talking to you. But exactly. You might just want to wait a minute.
You're in good company here. So.
No. But it's just we were trying to really, truly understand what you guys do so that as we talk with you and the Bloomberg audience listens. I mean, you guys are a manufacturer?
No, so you think of any electric motor that's out there in the world right now, it's made with a copper winding, expensive kind of copper, as we know. It's 50% more expensive today than it was this morning. And we remove all of that madness of windings and complex kind of infrastructure to build that. And we utilize printed circuit boards, which we see right here, like the kind of the green board you see back of the computer.
Right.
And we use it in etchings. And I'm going to turn this in the profile so your users can see it. And those that are listening, this is super ultra thin.
Wow.
So we are like 7 to 8% of the total copper used in a traditional wound motor. And as a result of that, our software helps people print these things. They actually print these at a PCB house. And then our clients who have mechanical skills and the ability to assemble take these units and they make them into electric motors that are used in gaming, robotics, HVAC, pumps, automation, haptics. So we have a pretty diverse group of clients. But as far as our discussion today, we do a lot of our work does support HVAC and air movement,
which makes sense in terms of all the data centers that are being built out. For those who are listening on radio, and you did a great job, Brian, of saying how thin it is, but that's basically it. It was like a thin disc. Like if we all just think about, I don't even, it's pretty flat. So, to give us an idea. Well, wait a minute. So how much of your business is increasingly supporting HVAC for those data centers, right? That we know, we've all talked about the amount of computing that's going on. It creates a ton of heat. How much of that, is that where a lot of growth is right now? Just give us an idea.
Yeah, I think for us, our growth is really around businesses and enterprises that want to innovate. So we're fortunate to have a couple of key players in the HVAC air movement space that are very innovative. They put a lot of money into R&D. They've been working with our technology for several years, and they're now commercializing it with their distributors and with their clients. The data center market, when I was fortunate to be involved with it when I was the CEO of a company called Source One, which got acquired by Veolia. And, we had energized 50 million square feet of data center space. But back then, and this is the early 2000s, a 50,000 square foot data center was big. But now that's a very small data center, and you're looking at most data centers now that are being built are the size of a Walmart, and there's enough energy in there. So next time you see a Walmart, that's enough energy for both the towns of Rockville and Garden City. So picture a bedroom community outside of New York of 50,000 people, and everything that they use, all those residences, all those businesses would use the same amount of power that you would see in a Walmart, the building that size. That's how. When people throw the numbers around, that's how exponentially big this power consumption is. And in our technology, in some small way, we're able to address it at the facility level with very efficient motors. So we're super tight, super light. So this way you can actually move more air. And then recently we filed some additional kind of technology and patents where we can actually offer cooling at the chip level within these like servers. So if you guys went into a data center, you would see thousands and thousands of what they look like, these college refrigerators, and inside them are all these servers and basically computers. Right. And inside the computers are a bunch of chips, and the chips need to get the heat out. So we actually have technology now, so we can do everything on the macro level, from large giant pumps and big plenum HVAC fans, all the way down to the chip board level, where we can actually place our etching within that integrated circuit and offer direct cooling on the chips. So for us, we hear about data center explosion. We're getting it on both ends. It's going to be rosy days for us.
Hey, Brian. One reason we like to talk to folks like you who serve all these different customers is to get a gauge on how these customers are spending money, how they're buying. What's the strength of your order book right now compared to, say, 6 months ago?
Oh, that's a great question. We got a little headwind early in the year when we had the, change in the administration and a little bit of tariff stuff, but that's settled down. So my guess is we're going to grow 50-60% year over year. Wow. We've done that the last couple of years. And again, I think that kind of resonates with the fortunate clientele that we have, which is they're always innovating. Even if there's bumps in the economy, they're always innovating. And when you see kind of volatility in the marketplace, because our offering is software, we kind of bust through all those physical barriers, right? So if we have a client that's that has a facility in Europe where it's unfavorable tax treatment or unfavorable tariff treatment, well, our binary file can be sent to Vietnam, or it can be sent to Wisconsin.
Right.
So they're able to kind of like move pretty quickly.
But they're not going to order. They're not going to use your software if they have nothing to build because their orders have dried up.
Correct, but I'm saying what they can do is if they don't want to be stuck to a certain geography, what our technology allows them to do is to assemble these physical motor and the circuit board that's associated with it anywhere in the world.
Okay, that makes
sense.
sense.
That's pretty empowering.
So can I understand? I want to understand. So your advantage, if we cut to the chase, is that you guys don't need copper windings.
Correct.
Which we know copper is expensive, and it's a lot more expensive than it was based on the latest tariffs from President Trump. At the same time, you make things more efficient at a time when we know the power demand is amping up exponentially, right? A lot of it because of data centers. And so if we can make things more efficient, that's going to be better on so many different levels in terms of cost, in terms of environmental impact, a lot of things. Those are the two key advantages.
Yeah, and one of the big drivers for us that our clients select us on is form factor. So because we are ultra thin and ultra lightweight, well, you can fit, you can have more production in the same footprint. So in a data center environment, you've invested, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in a facility. And if we're able to, improve the program space, i.e. give them more room to put more servers, because our clients who are using the technology are able to reduce their footprint on their big plenum fans. And we're talking like a 50-60% weight savings and area savings. Like all of a sudden, they're able to, fit more product inside their program space.
Brian,
so we may be downstream, but we have a very significant impact on these other businesses.
Got to ask you, because you're at this intersection of energy and technology, right? And I just think about Tim and I talk about it all the time. AI certainly every day in terms of the demand that just seems to continue to grow, and then the energy needs to meet it, to be able to do it. Are we going to have a crisis of some sort?
It's literally gone nuclear, and that's no pun intended, as you guys.
But that's going to take time, so that's why I'm saying, is there going to be some sort of crisis where there isn't going to be enough power to meet everything that's needed, or the demand?
I think our friends, the utility companies, are gonna be in for I think some tough planning. The power pools are gonna have some tough planning to do, like, because you picture a building the size of Walmart, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I want 80 megawatts. Like, that's just like, we throw those numbers around and people are like, oh, okay, 80 megawatts. What is that? Well, like I said, it's like a small city of 100,000 people. So that's a lot of planning, a lot of effort in the utility company. I think what the big kind of data centers are doing, like DC Blocks and Crusoe and Amazon and our friends at Meta, they're just taking matters in their own hands. They're building their own generation sources.
Yeah, it's just kind of all interesting how this is merging together. Brian, come back soon. Brian Casey, Chief Executive Officer of ECM. Coming up next, Eric Adams, some highlights from our interview earlier on Bloomberg. That's next.
It's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg, keeping an eye on Levi Strauss. After hours, after earnings, Levi up now by just about 7.5%. This on a day when the S&P 500 index rose to a record. Traders parsing a batch of corporate outlooks. Again, the S&P 500 index at a record 6280.46, higher today by just about 0.3%. The Dow up 192, gain there of 0.4%. NASDAQ up 19. The NASDAQ Composite Index up 0.1%. But interestingly, on a day when stocks are moving higher, we had the NASDAQ 100 Index down 0.2%. The 10-year 4.34%. Treasury yields little change. The 2-year 3.86%. Spot gold up 0.3%, 33.24 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.2%, 66.87 a barrel. Veronica Willis is global investment strategist at Wells Fargo Bank, and right here on Bloomberg Business Week Daily, she told us she is looking ahead to next week's earnings news.
Yeah, I do think there is still some room to move higher. The market's expecting some deregulation that should benefit the banks, and so I think that's driven a lot of that performance in financials overall. I think with earnings next week, we'll need to see some kind of follow through. So we need to see some good earnings reports from these banks to buy into that rally. So it'll be really important to watch.
Veronica Willis of Wells Fargo Bank. All of this, of course, coming down Tuesday when we hear from J.P. Morgan Chase. One of today's big movers, Delta Airlines, surging 12%. Delta reinstating a profit outlook for the year, says travelers are coming back. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie Pellet. Do appreciate it. Well, New York City Mayor Eric Adams was in the Bureau here at Bloomberg this morning. He joined Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Surveillance. They covered a lot, including his relationship with President Trump.
I look across the opulence of LA to a really tough part of town. And the other day we saw military enforcement wrapped around these deportations and ICE marching across MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. If the critics to you will say you're in Trump's back pocket, how are you going to push against the president and his administration if we have those tensions in New York?
You know, one of the best saying is if you tell a lie long enough, you think it's true. But we need to deal with the facts here. We took this administration to court on things we thought were wrong more than any mayor in the country, more than any mayor in the country. But when I needed the president to lift the stop work order on a multi-billion-dollar wind farm project in Sunset Park, 1,500 union jobs, 500,000 homes would have benefited from it. I flew to Washington, had a healthy conversation with him. He lifted the stop work order. Same relationship I had with President Biden, 10 trips to Washington, 2 meetings with the president to deal with law enforcement officer. I nicknamed myself the Biden of Brooklyn. I work with presidents. I don't war with presidents. I have to deliver for the city of New York. And it would be irresponsible for any mayor not to do that.
But then to the granularity of this election and this, it's like Lindsay in the 1980s or something. I can't keep track. Is Adams an independent, a Democrat, a Republican? What is he? We don't know this one. He's an independent. I'm kidding. Mayor Adams, my team is listening to this interview, and there has to be a clarification of your relationship with the President of the United States. When will we see that?
I think you're seeing it now. You're seeing a mayor that's defending and fighting for his city in a responsible way. New York City is the largest city in America. And if you're going to be the mayor of that city and you are unwilling to communicate with the president of the United States, if it's Biden or Donald Trump, if it's a Democrat or Republican, that's irresponsible. Governor Hochul went to Washington several times. Mayors across the country are going to Washington. And so for anyone that states that the mayor of the largest city in the country should not be communicating with the White House, that's irresponsible. You're not delivering for your city. I must deliver for New York. That is my primary goal.
Well, there you have it. New York City Mayor Eric Adams with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Surveillance earlier today. Joining us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio is Miles Miller. He's Bloomberg News senior reporter. He covers Homeland Security now, but he has covered 3 different New York City mayoral administrations. Miles, good to have you back here in New York City. There was this dance that we saw the mayor doing just now, trying to distance himself from the president, but also saying that any mayor of New York City has to work with the president. Is that enough to convince voters that he is the right choice come November?
I think the mayor is sending two messages. On the one hand, he's saying, to the base that may like Mamdani or may be more centrist and like Cuomo, that he's going to fight Trump. But to that base that voted for Trump in New York, people not just on Staten Island, but people in an AOC district in Queens, where I grew up in Morris Park, who may like Trump, that, hey, I've worked with him. So it's two messages. He's sort of A/B testing the message, but he's doing a full court press in the press over the last 2 weeks that we haven't seen the likes of since before the indictment.
He says whoever is mayor of New York City has to deliver for New York. He says he's delivered for New York City. Has he? Do folks think he has delivered for New York City?
It depends on what camp you're in, where me and Tim live in North Brooklyn. It remains to be seen. People feel like, what they've heard in the press is sort of negative when it comes to his record. But when you look at some of the things that the mayor has done, I've known Eric for 15 years now. City of Yes, a massive housing policy change, rezoning, allowing more housing above like a laundromat or above a commercial. That is big. Some of the stuff
that's been adopted by other candidates running,
including Mamdani, who signed on today to talk about expanding that and to talk about getting that funding in Albany. So when you think about projects like City of Yes, trying to work to fund pre-K, you have to think, okay, has this mayor actually started to deliver on some of what he promised he would do?
How is he positioning himself in this race, and sort of like where is he in the polls? Because Mamdani's still the clear favorite if you look at Polymarket.
Oh, yeah. You look at Polymarket, you look at the latest poll from Slingshot that showed him with 11%, trailing Mamdani, trailing Cuomo. So what Adams is going to do, what his posture has been, to talk about his record, talk about what he's been doing, and he is basically saying he never quits. That's a direct, response to Cuomo dropping out after the scandal that afflicted his administration. He says he's the never quitter, and he's been going back to 2021 when he was down in the polls against Andrew Yang, who was sure to win. And of course, that didn't happen. So he's been looking backwards in order to look forwards. And he's presenting himself as a centrist who's tough on crime, who will work across the aisle, and who's actually gotten things done, or so he says.
Does it matter, Democrat, Republican? Tom was kind of pushing him, Tom Keene earlier on surveillance, independent. Does it matter what party he aligns himself with?
Not really. And history has told us that there have been candidates who've been able to win, not directly aligned with a specific party. Obviously, the person who owns this company was able to run as an independent and win 3 times. But this is a Democratic electorate that is more energized than it's ever been before. Record number of people coming out to vote for Mamdani. But when it comes to the bigger general election base, will that stick? And I think, no one can see what happens there because there's so much time between now and November. It remains to be seen what could happen in this race.
Do you think that indeed Andrew Cuomo is splitting the anti-Mamdani vote as the mayor alleges?
Well, what's clear now is that Andrew Cuomo is not running a campaign, right? He is still in the race, but is not doing any campaigning. We actually learned from folks today that Cuomo might have actually dropped the team that was working with him. So you can see the vote splitting. You can see it in the poll, and you can see it in when you talk to people. They're the people who voted for Cuomo or who ranked him. You saw it in that vote tally is there room for Eric Adams, and he can't drop out, meaning Cuomo. So what can happen here? But this is New York politics. Anything can really happen. So many things have happened in this city's 400-year history.
Is it Mamdani's to lose? And just got about 10 seconds.
Oh, it feels like it's Mamdani's to lose, but we were talking just a couple months ago, and we thought it was going to be Cuomo. Good point.
That's what makes New York politics so interesting. Miles Miller, fantastic. Bloomberg News senior reporter, as we said, covered 3 different New York City mayoral administrations, has seen a lot.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, if you're just joining us, just a reminder of how we wrapped up on this Thursday. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovec, 17 points higher on the S&P 500. It was a
record.
Lovely. Record close. 62.80.46.
I love when you do the numbers. No, the numbers.
Why?
Because, like, we're just going to forget about it tomorrow. Right?
I know. Well, I know. But it matters today.
I just want to say behind the scenes, Carol, like she's got like the ruler out. She's got the graph paper. She's looking at the charts. I'm just kidding. She's doing it all in the terminal. What?
It's all on the terminal.
It is all in the terminal. It's pretty. It's accessible. Let's just say that.
I'm Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovec. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move with Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter Denitsa Sikova. She is in the house. Gotta say, we talked about airlines a lot today, and rightfully so.
Yeah, it's not only airlines, it's all travel stocks up. Of course, we've talked about Delta a lot. The ticker is DAL. It closed 12% higher on the day as vacationers are coming back, injecting a fresh sense of confidence in the industry. But actually, the biggest gainer today among the airlines was United and American. They gained 14 and 13%. There is a lot of optimism. The earnings season is starting there. Obviously, a lot of airlines pulled their outlook. Now, clearly, things look much better. We're seeing that confidence. So that report is saying much more than just the airlines are doing well. We saw a lot of people making connections on how this is affecting the consumer and consumer confidence. But what we saw in that report was corporate travel is strengthening. Consumers have become a little numb to the ongoing trade disputes, which is very much welcome. And obviously, Delta was the first major airline to pull its outlook. And now it's kind of the first that's coming back stronger. Delta is still down 6% year to date, despite the jump today. But clearly, the biggest fears seem to be fading, and there is a lot of optimism today for the whole industry.
We talked to Jefferies Sheila Kayalu earlier, and she talked about all the airline industry, and I felt like she was a little bit more subdued, right?
Oh, yeah.
About what we got from Delta, and that it didn't necessarily justify the jump that we saw in these share prices and everything jumping.
Yeah, I mean, Ed Bastian, the company CEO, underscored this on the analyst call. He said the carrier was struggling to fill seats in the main economy cabin, particularly during off-peak periods. So, yeah, the front of the plane is doing well. The loyalty program is strong. The highly profitable business class, business travel is trending higher and strengthening, as you said. But it's sort of bifurcated.
The Delta One Lounge.
Investors love buying the dip. The stock was down a lot. That makes sense. I don't know if 12% makes sense, but buying the dip has worked.
The Delta One Lounge, huh?
Hey, yeah.
Okay, you're just ignoring me.
No, I actually have a good segue.
Oh.
CrowdStrike. From Delta to CrowdStrike, because this was a company that last year had a performance issue that very much affected Delta.
Well done, well done.
Thank you.
You're full circle.
Full circle. CRWD, CrowdStrike.
CRWD is actually closed down today, 5% lower. It comes after a few downgrades. First one was today, CFRA downgraded the security software company to hold. They say the company remains one of our top picks in the cybersecurity space, but pretty much it has become too expensive. The stock rose about 60% in the past 3 months, so it makes sense it's being part of that big relief rally we have seen.
It's up 42% year to date.
It's incredible.
It's quite a bounce.
We were just talking about Delta being down 6%, so
yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it's really impressive. We also had Piper Sandler downgrading CrowdStrike to neutral. Very similar reasons. It's just too expensive. The shares are nearing the price tag they had. They don't see a near-term scenario that would meaningfully increase estimates. So kind of the opposite of Delta. It's sky-high valuations. Investors are not so excited about it.
4 sells on this stock.
Yeah.
4 sells. Did you find that interesting? Do you have another creative
I was just thinking about I was thinking about French fries. Your French fries.
My French fries is famous for French fries. So is McDonald's.
MCD is the ticker.
Yeah, McDonald's closed 2% higher today. It's off Goldman note saying upgrading the burger chain to buy from neutral. She downgraded Cheesecake Factory at the same time. So, there is arbitrage trade there. As expected by investors, year-to-date sales performance for fast food operator has been under pressure. Obviously, low-income consumers have been suffering, but we're seeing some potential in McDonald's. McDonald's recently introduced Daily Double Burger and the return of its snacks wrap. So that's one reason Goldman is quite bullish on the chain. They're optimistic about traffic. McDonald's has managed to grow sales while many of its peers have slowed or fallen into negative territory in recent months. They are mentioning the success of its new Mac Value platform, and they actually have a pretty high price target. The price target is $345, which is like double-digit % upside from here, which is pretty impressive. Not so optimistic about Cheesecake, but McDonald's, a lot of optimism there.
It's a lot of fries.
Daily Double, not Jeopardy, okay?
No.
It's 2 100% beef patties, seasoned to perfection. I'm reading from McDonald's here, okay? Melty American cheese topped off with shredded lettuce, slivered onions, mayo, and 2 juicy slices of tomatoes.
So it's 2 chunks of beef, basically.
So much protein. I get it. That's why it's popular.
2 patties, right?
2 patties. That's the double part, yeah.
Who's making noises?
I think it's the computer.
I think there's
the computer.
There's a little alerts, right? Or maybe it's hungry and it wants that daily.
It's excited.
Double burger. Who doesn't?
We all want it. It's 5 p.m.
Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter Denisa Sikova. Check out Stock Movers, our podcast, 5-minute episodes. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast.
Have a wonderful vacation, Carol Massar. We will miss you.
I will miss you. I'll see you in a week. Be well. Take care. All right, do not go anywhere. Balance of Power starts now.
This is Balance of Power, live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. Alongside Kaylee Lyons, I'm Joe Matthew.
Tonight, Congress shifts its focus to keeping the government funded. The work being done on Capitol Hill with roughly 30 legislative days to pass appropriations and avert a shutdown, and a more pressing deadline to pass President Trump's rescissions package by next Friday.
Plus, the Trump tariff fight turns political.
I think what we saw several months ago, now it's paused again happily, is the kind of broad-based industrial policy that I think ultimately will harm the American economy.
The tough words from the former vice president today as Trump wages a war of words with Brazil's leader, Lula, now pushing back against President Trump after his threat to slap 50% tariffs on all Brazilian goods. Trump suggesting a bigger political reasoning behind the hefty tariff. We'll have more on the trade fight where those long-promised deals are coming up.
Also tonight, the frank conversation Secretary of State Marco Rubio had with his Russian counterpart, seeking to express the president's disappointment with Vladimir Putin over his attacks on Ukraine. We'll have more on where things stand in the war and developments out of Israel with former NATO Supreme Allied Commander and retired 4-star Air Force General Philip Breedlove up ahead.
And the president's birthright citizenship executive order blocked again. The determination in court today that reinstated protections put on hold by the Supreme Court last month. And what happens next in one of the president's signature policy moves?
We've got all that, plus a Bloomberg scoop for you tonight. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang meeting with President Trump at the White House today ahead of the CEO's trip to China.
Now on the offense with global leaders as the administration issues tariff demand letters. In total, 22 letters have been delivered so far, igniting negotiations with some nations and a political standoff with others. Bloomberg's Mike Shepard and Romaine Bostick are on hand to discuss both the political and market implications of it all. We start right now with Mike Shepard here in our Washington, D.C. bureau with more. Mike, learning about this meeting between Jensen Huang and President Trump tells us a lot about where we may be going next with export controls and so forth. What is his ask for the commander-in-chief?
You know, it's unclear what his ask is. We've been able to confirm that the two men met. And what you see in private from Jensen Huang and get a sense from him is not different from what you see in public. He has argued on behalf of NVIDIA against a lot of the export restrictions that the U.S. has put, primarily against his company when it comes to selling advanced AI chips to China. And the idea for the U.S. government is one that's driven by national security motivations. They want to prevent China from taking those AI chips and putting them toward military uses, possibly. The whole dual use question that surrounds a lot of advanced technology. But Jensen's argument has been, and it's been consistent for months, that those export controls don't work, and they also risk putting his company and the U.S. and American technology at a disadvantage to Chinese competitors, especially Huawei Technologies, which is developing its own vanguard of AI chips and trying to roll them out, and perhaps trying to steal what could be U.S. market share in some other places around the world, Joe.
So NVIDIA, obviously an example of a company who is trying to navigate what is a very complicated and uncertain situation around export controls. Meanwhile, you have companies and, frankly, countries across the board trying to navigate what is a very uncertain environment when it comes to tariffs. We didn't get any new trade letters from the president today, Mike, though he has suggested more are coming, and there's no deals that we have yet in hand in addition to the ones that we already knew about.
You're right, Kelly. There's only a handful of deals that have actually been signed, sealed, and perhaps delivered, and even the details of those remain a little bit obscure and thin in the eyes of many economists who specialize in global trade and have gone through years and years of rounds of previous accords like USMCA, to just name one. What we're seeing now is this waiting period now until August 1st, and so many countries are under pressure to deliver some sort of concession to the U.S. to reach some sort of understanding with the Trump administration to avert much higher tariffs. And a great example of that, of course, is Brazil. They were hit yesterday with an eye-watering 50% level, and that came with a little bit of political topspin, as we were discussing right at the top of the show. The president of Brazil, leftist leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, he has viewed what the Trump letter contained as very much a political message. And Donald Trump was singling out Brazil for a much higher rate because he thinks that Lula's predecessor, former right-wing president Jair Bolsonaro, has been treated unfairly by the Brazilian judiciary. He is now facing charges there for attempting to foment a coup. And this is all adding up to a different element altogether in trade negotiations. It's not just about economics and trade. Perhaps it's also about politics, too.
All right, Bloomberg's Mike Shepard, thank you so much, as always. Now, the president today was crediting his policies for fresh records in the stock market, posting on True Social, quote, tech stocks, industrial stocks, and NASDAQ hit all-time record highs, crypto through the roof. NVIDIA is up 47% since Trump tariffs. And joining us now for more context is Bloomberg's Romaine Bostick, live from World Headquarters in New York. Romaine, should we be characterizing this as a market that's rallying because of tariffs or in spite of them?
Probably a little bit of both, Kelly. I think the idea that Trump is at least trying to get at is that some of his policies maybe have cleared the way for this rally that we've seen. But of course, this is a rally coming off of a huge drawdown that we saw in U.S. equity markets back in April that were also due directly to his policies. So what he's stating there is true. The S&P, yes, indeed, did close at a record high on this day. Industrial stocks, not quite at a record high, but only about a percentage point, less than a percentage point from achieving that record high. You saw that reflected today in the Dow Industrials, the Dow Transports, as well as in another index tracked in the S&P 500 that includes a lot of the airline stocks. So there is some optimism in this market, not so much that his policies are helping, but that the negative effect of those policies is not going to be as bad as some people had priced into this market just a couple of months ago.
Is this a rally that's broadening the way we tend to hear about, Romaine? I'm supposed to ask you about the broadening of the rally, the rotation into value, or is it the same 4 or 5 stocks pushing these indexes to new highs?
Pretty much the same 4 or 5 stocks, Joe. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but when you look at the big rally that we've had off of those April lows, I mean, most of those gains still are the big tech companies, your Microsofts, your Amazons, and of course, NVIDIA. You guys were just mentioning NVIDIA a while ago with Jensen Huang apparently being seen entering into the White House ahead of his big China trip. That remains an 800-pound gorilla. in this financial market, and it remains the big part of the reason why stocks overall are at record highs. Do you want a broadening of this rally, Joe? Well, in order to get that, you need to see a lot of those smaller companies, the companies in the Russell 2000, the companies in the S&P 400 mid caps, start to post more meaningful gains when it comes to their earnings. And these are the companies that are most directly affected by a lot of Trump's policies, whether it's the direct effect from tariffs or the second order effects on economic activity. Those are the companies, and more importantly, the stocks that are still struggling. Those are the stocks that are nowhere near their record highs. So if you do get a broadening of those into those names, that's good for the market. If you don't, then maybe we can see this market range bound for a considerable time.
Really important. We're always lucky to have Bloomberg's Romain Bostic and his view from world headquarters in New York. Romain, thank you. Joining us now for more insight into the global economic impact and the market impact of these tariffs, Christopher Smart, founder, managing partner of the Arbroath Group. Christopher, it's great to have you back on Bloomberg TV and radio. What do you make of the S&P 500, the NASDAQ hitting all-time highs against the backdrop of this extreme uncertainty that we keep hearing about when it comes to trade and tariffs? Is this a market that's just grown numb to this idea, or is it the ultimate taco?
Well, Joe, good to be with you. I think, you and your colleagues have covered the taco trade inside and out for the last few weeks. I'm not sure if Trump always chickens out. I mean, you'll have to ask folks in Iran or even importers of Chinese goods, which are facing stiff tariffs right now. But it's